Hello everyone. This video is going to recap genetic crosses. So this will be a good recap for everybody who has done National 5, but will also help the people who haven't done National 5 to give them a little bit of the background knowledge that they need. Okay? Right. Everybody's appearance is determined by two things. There's your genes, the inherited characteristics that you get from your parents, and there's also the environmental effects. And all the observable characteristics of an organism are referred to as its phenotype. The genes an organism has are its genotype. So an organism's phenotype depends on its genotype plus environmental factors. Now, we have referred to homologous pairs of chromosomes before. Homologous pairs of chromosomes contain the same types of genes that code for the same characteristics like eye colour or hair colour or blood group. However, each chromosome in the pair can have a different version of the gene or a different type of the gene. These different types of gene are referred to as alleles. So, in a pair of chromosomes, one chromosome could carry the allele of the gene for brown eyes, and the other chromosome may carry the allele of the gene for blue eyes. Okay, so you can see, there you go, here's a homologous pair of chromosomes. This chromosome on the left has got the allele for brown eyes, and this one on the right has got the allele of the gene for blue eyes. If an organism has got two alleles the same for a particular gene, they are said to be homozygous. So, this homologous pair of chromosomes has got an allele of the gene for brown eyes on each chromosome. So this individual is said to be homozygous for brown eyes. They will have brown eyes. However, this individual is homozygous for the allele for blue eyes. They will have blue eyes. What happens though if they have got one copy of the brown eye allele and one copy of the blue eye allele? Well, this is called heterozygous, where you have got two different alleles of the gene. Does this person have brown eyes, or do they have blue eyes? Well, that all depends on which allele is dominant and which allele is recessive. The dominant allele is always expressed in the phenotype. In this case, brown eyes is dominant and they are represented by an uppercase letter. Recessive alleles are only expressed in the phenotype if there is no dominant allele present. So if you are heterozygous and you have got one dominant allele and one recessive allele, the recessive allele is masked. So someone who is heterozygous for eye colour, i.e. has one dominant brown eye allele and one recessive blue eye allele, they would have brown eyes because brown is the dominant allele. Okay. One of the ways in which we can track inheritance through generations is by doing a monohybrid cross. Monohybrid crosses were experiments that were carried out by a monk called Gregor Mendel. Mendel did experiments with pea plants to look at the inheritance of various characteristics through the generations. However, since we are human biologists, not plant biologists, we are not going to look at pea plants, we are going to look at human characteristics. Okay, and the characteristic we're going to look at first is the characteristic of albinism. Okay, now we have different skin colours and different eye colours because of different amounts of a pigment called melanin. The more melanin you have, then the darker your skin and your hair and your eyes will be. Okay? People with albinism carry mutated versions of the allele for melanin, which means that melanin is not produced. Right? It results in very light hair, very light skin, and in some cases the eyes are pink because there is no pigment in the iris, and the pinkness is the blood vessels shining through from inside the eye. Okay, and as you can see from the pictures there, you get albinism in all types of racial groups. So we're going to look at a genetic cross for the condition albinism. So the gene for normal pigment is dominant. So we'll give it a capital A to represent the dominant allele. And then the gene for albinism is recessive. So we will give it a lowercase letter, a small a, to represent the recessive allele of the gene. The parents, the P stands for parents, we will make one parent homozygous dominant and we will make the other parent homozygous recessive. When the parents form their gametes, remember that gametes only carry one copy of each chromosome, so they will only have one copy of an allele. When this parent makes gametes, they will all contain the dominant allele. And when this parent makes gametes, they will all contain the recessive allele. So all of the children in the first generation, that's what the F1 stands for, will have the genotype, big A, little a. They will be heterozygous, and the phenotype will be normal pigment. If we take two heterozygous individuals as the parents, so we're starting a different cross here, these are the parents, this time when they make gametes, half of the gametes will contain the dominant allele and half of them will contain a recessive allele. And the same for this parent here. Half of them will have the dominant allele, half of them will have the recessive allele. Now, we do a wee diagram called a Punnett square, where we put the genotypes of the gametes along the side, and then we match up what genotype we will get in the children if particular gametes fertilise. So if this gamete here and this gamete here fertilise, we will get homozygous dominant. And if it's this gamete and this one, it will be heterozygous. This gamete and this one will be another heterozygous, and then the two recessive alleles at the end there, you will be homozygous recessive. So this time in the F1 we have got one homozygous dominant, two heterozygous, and one homozygous recessive. So these ones are all normal pigment, and then this one is albino. Okay, if you want to do this as a ratio, you would say there was a 3:1 ratio, dominant to recessive. You could also do it as a percentage, so you would say that there was a 25% chance of any child being albino.